Can you imagine living a life where the very people who brought you into this world treated you like a burden? An unwanted shadow? My parents did. And now they're not just watching, they're forced to witness another man proudly, unequivocally call me his son. The taste of that victory? It's bittersweet but oh so satisfying. I'm 27 now, but the echo of never truly being wanted in my own home still rings. My parents weren't the movie villain cruel type. No harsh insults or physical punishments. Their cruelty was far more insidious. 1,000 tiny cuts designed to remind me I was less than an afterthought, a constant inconvenience. My younger sister, on the other hand, was royalty from the moment she was born. If she even hinted at wanting a toy, it was hers. If I dared to express a desire, I was ungrateful. Her tears brought immediate comfort, while mine were met with accusations of being dramatic. She never lifted a finger, but I, the older sibling, was constantly told to help out. That help quickly escalated, becoming my full responsibility in my teenage years. Cooking, cleaning, making sure she was taken care of. My life was essentially her support system. Their control didn't stop at home. Every single opportunity one grasped for, they found a way to snatch it away. Wanted to join a club at school? Suddenly I had too many responsibilities at home. Plans with friends? Oh, they didn't feel well, and needed me by their side. And scholarships? The ones I poured my heart into, staying up late studying? They outright refused to sign the paperwork, claiming I was selfish for wanting to leave. The manipulation was relentless. If I ever dared to push back, the waterworks would start, followed by a theatrical performance for family members about how difficult I was, how much they'd sacrificed, how I never appreciated them. Soon my phone would ring with calls from aunts and uncles, urging me to be nicer to my poor parents. The moment I turned 18, I was done. I packed my bags for college the second I possibly could. My parents, of course, refused any financial support, so I worked multiple jobs, just barely scraping by. It was exhausting, utterly draining, but it was still 1,000 times better than suffocating under their thumb. That's when David entered my life. He was my best friend's dad, and he was everything my parents weren't. Warm, supportive, unfailingly encouraging. It started subtly. An invitation to dinner when he knew I was skipping meals to save money. A quiet word of advice when I felt completely lost. But over time, he became the father I'd always longed for. He celebrated my victories, big and small, helped me navigate my losses, and never once, not for a single second, made me feel like a burden. And my actual parents? Oh, they hated it. At first, they brushed David off, scoffing at the idea of me spending time with some random man. But as the years passed and David's loving presence in my life became undeniably obvious, their aggression mounted. Snide comments became their default whenever I mentioned his name. If I dared to post about David on social media, passive-aggressive comments would appear, or texts would ping my phone. Glad to see you found a real father. Don't forget who raised you. They never invited me home for the holidays, but if I spent them with David's family, it was framed as a monumental betrayal. But I was thriving without them. I worked hard, graduated, landed a stable job. My life was finally mine, and I wasn't about to let their toxic guilt drag me back into that dark cycle. David, meanwhile, never once pressured me to choose. He just was there. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, David started referring to me as his son. It wasn't one grand declaration, but a gentle, gradual shift. First in private, then with close friends, and finally at a bustling family gathering he introduced me. "Oh, this is my son," he said, so casually, so naturally. He didn't hesitate, didn't add a disclaimer. And for the first time in my entire life I felt it. Not like a son but son. For the first time I felt like I truly belonged. The moment my parents found out, let's just say it didn't go over well. It didn't take long. A few days after David's introduction, my phone lit up with a call from them. I just stared at the screen. They never called. Our interactions were usually confined to passive-aggressive texts, or a manipulative urgent email that was anything but. I let it go to voicemail. 10 seconds later another call. Then another. On the fourth attempt I answered, bracing myself. They started with their signature move. A long, shaky breath, signaling a guilt trip was incoming. They demanded to know if it was true. Had I really let some man replace them? They sounded heartbroken, as if I just confessed to a life of crime. They repeated over and over how hurt they were, how they never thought I'd be so cruel. Then came the demand. I needed to apologize immediately. Calling another man dad was an unforgivable betrayal. Disgusting. What kind of son does that? What would people think? They kept talking, but I wasn't listening anymore. I knew this game. They'd push and push until I broke, agreeing to whatever made them feel better. But this time I wasn't playing. I told them there was nothing to apologize for. David had been more of a father to me than they ever were. Silence. Then a sharp, offended inhale. They hung up. I didn't think much of it at first. I should have known better. A few hours later my phone started buzzing. Notifications. They'd liked an old photo of mine from 2 years ago. Then another. Then a random, vague comment under a post about my work promotion. Certainly not congratulatory. The next morning, more notifications. They were systematically going through my social media, liking random things, making sure I knew they were watching. Then came the text. Hope you're doing okay. We're worried about you. Hope you're not being influenced by the wrong people. Just want to make sure you're not being manipulated. I ignored them all. By noon my sister had texted. She was 24, still the golden child, still comfortably nestled under my parents' control. No greeting, no genuine check-in. Just, why are you being so cruel to our parents? She hit me with all the classics. They did everything for us. They sacrificed so much. They're devastated. Then the part one was waiting for. They're your parents. You only get one set. I didn't respond. Later that night I finally called them back. I asked them point blank why they never defended me. Why they let me be treated like I didn't matter. Another classic move. A dramatic sigh. Then they said it. We didn't want to make things worse. That was it. That was their reason. Not that they didn't see it, not that they disagreed, but that standing up for me simply wasn't worth the trouble. I hung up. That night I blocked my parents on Instagram. By morning they had switched tactics. Family members started reaching out. Some were subtle. You know, they just miss you so much. Others went straight for the jugular. I don't know if I could ever do that to my own parents. It didn't matter how I explained it. They didn't want to hear about the years of neglect, the constant manipulation, the way they only ever cared about control. To them they were just heartbroken parents, abandoned by their ungrateful son. David of course saw right through it all. He told me something that stuck. That love isn't about ownership. That just because someone raised you doesn't give them the right to mistreat you. That real family is the people who show up for you, not the ones who demand loyalty simply because of blood. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't going to let them guilt me back into their life. The next text from my parents was an ultimatum. If we're not your parents, don't ever ask us for anything again. I stared at it for a second. Then I responded. You've never given me anything to ask for. Blocked. First there was silence. No texts, no calls, no flying monkeys. For the first time in years I felt an exhilarating rush of freedom. But I knew better. My parents weren't the type to let things go. I just didn't expect them to escalate this fast. It started with a warning from a cousin. A short, vague text. Hey, I don't know if you've seen, but your parents have been saying some stuff. Might want to check Facebook. I didn't need to check. I already knew their playbook. But curiosity got the best of me. Sure enough, their page was a battlefield of vague, dramatic posts, clearly designed to garner sympathy without directly admitting what had happened. Things like, it breaks our hearts when parents give their whole life for a child only to be abandoned for strangers. And, some people forget who was there for them when it mattered. Followed by floods of supportive comments from distant relatives and old family friends. You're such good parents, you don't deserve this. He'll realize one day how much he's hurt you. I rolled my eyes and closed the app. But it didn't stop there. I started getting messages from family members I hadn't spoken to in years. Some feigned concern, others were more direct, telling me how selfish and ungrateful I had become. One aunt even asked if I was being brainwashed by David. Then my sister got involved. Unlike me, she never had to question where she stood in the family. She got the praise, the support, the unconditional love. So, of course, she backed them completely. Out of nowhere, I got a text from her. No greeting, no small talk, just one venomous sentence. You're a disappointment. Blocked. A few hours later, I noticed I was no longer following her on social media. I checked her page. Yep, she had blocked me too. At this point, I thought they had surely reached their limit. I was wrong. A week later, I was at work when the receptionist called me up front. She looked incredibly uncomfortable, my first red flag. And there they were, standing in the lobby, looking around like they had every right to be there. Their faces contorted into tight, forced smiles. The moment they spotted me, they started talking loudly. They needed to talk to me. This wasn't how families acted. They deserved a conversation after everything they had done for me. I couldn't even give them 5 minutes. People were staring. The receptionist was shifting awkwardly, unsure if she should intervene. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just told them to leave. That's when the tears started. They began listing off every single sacrifice they had ever made for me. How they had worked so hard to give me a good life. How they always loved me. How they didn't understand where they went wrong. The security guard had seen enough. Within minutes they were being escorted out, still calling my name, still playing the victim. I went back to my desk like nothing happened. 2 days later the letters started. Long dramatic letters mailed to my apartment. Pages filled with twisted memories of my childhood. Underlined sentences about how much they loved me. guilt trips about how they had given me life, and I was throwing them away. I didn't read them. Straight to the trash. David didn't even seem surprised when I told him. He just shook his head and said, "Real love isn't conditional." Then came the next big event. My sister's wedding. I hadn't spoken to her in months and I had zero plans to go. But apparently that wasn't an option. I got a text from my parents listing out the date and time followed by, "We expect you to be there. You're still part of this family." No question, no invite, just an expectation. I ignored it. 2 days later, another text. "We can't believe how selfish you are. This is your sister's wedding. You really won't put your issues aside for one day." Ignored. Then a final message from my sister herself. "If you're not willing to apologize to our parents, you're not welcome at my wedding." That one I answered. Good. I wasn't planning on going. Blocked. Apparently that was the last straw. My parents lost it. I found out later from a cousin that they had gone off at a family gathering. A full meltdown, screaming about how David had stolen me, how I was brainwashed, how I was throwing away my family. People were starting to see it now. Some relatives still took their side, but others, they were starting to back away. They weren't defending them anymore. They weren't agreeing. If I thought my parents were done after the wedding fiasco, I was wrong. Blocking them, refusing to engage. It only made them more desperate. And when they got desperate, they got messy. First, their smear campaign went public. Their Facebook became a battlefield of vague, cryptic posts about selfish children. But then they got bolder, directly calling me out, twisting the truth to make themselves the ultimate victims. Some people bought into it. Others started pushing back, asking why their perfect son had cut contact. The cracks in their narrative started to show. They wrote long rambling posts about how they sacrificed everything, how I had cut off my real family for strangers, and how it was so heartbreaking to watch their own child be brainwashed. Some relatives still ate it up, commenting things like, "You're such strong parents, he'll realize one day how much he hurt you." Others just stopped engaging. But that wasn't enough for them. They needed to do more damage. First it was the Facebook posts, then family members reaching out urging me to reconsider. The messages grew more desperate, more aggressive. And then a week later, an email landed in my job's HR inbox. Someone, an anonymous concerned relative, had claimed I was unstable and mentally unfit for my position. It didn't take a detective to figure out who was behind it. HR wouldn't tell me the name, but they did say the email was filled with vague concerns about my behavior and how they thought I was being led down a dangerous path. It was laughable. HR called me in for a meeting, their expressions careful but professional. They had received an anonymous complaint about my mental instability. I expected panic, but instead my manager just sighed. "We've seen these kinds of things before," they said. "Someone trying to stir up trouble." After a brief review, they dismissed the complaint as baseless. But the fact that they even tried to sabotage my job? That was a new low. David, of course, wasn't about to stay silent. He made a single Facebook post, not mentioning my parents, not even referring to the situation directly, but the message was clear. Real love is unconditional. Real love doesn't demand obedience. Real love doesn't manipulate. The comments were flooded with support. People knew. Even the ones who had been neutral before started backing away from my parents. That's when my parents tried to take things offline. David's family was hosting a big gathering. A casual event with food, music, and a bunch of close friends. I was invited, obviously, and somehow my parents found out. I was in the middle of a conversation when I saw them standing outside the venue, looking around like they were searching for someone. I turned to David, who was already reaching for his phone. Within minutes, security was escorting them off the property. They caused a scene, of course, loud protests about how they were just trying to see their son, how cruel it was that they were being kept away. But no one was buying it. That was the moment some of my relatives finally got it. The ones who had still been defending them, still thinking this was just a misunderstanding. They finally saw how unhinged they had become. After that, things started unraveling fast. David, being David, never asked for anything in return for all the love and support he gave me. But that week he gave me something I'll never forget. A small bracelet, simple, with one word engraved on it. Son. It wasn't a legal adoption, obviously, but the message was clear. And when my parents found out, they absolutely lost it. Another Facebook rant. This time it wasn't vague. It was an all-out meltdown, caps lock, excessive punctuation, talking about how some man had stolen me, how I was throwing away my real family, how they were done being parents to an ungrateful, disloyal child. That post, that was the final straw. Relatives who had been on the fence before? Gone. People who had been offering them sympathy? Silent. No one wanted to be associated with that level of unhinged desperation. Meanwhile, my sister's wedding finally happened. And it was a disaster. Without me there, all the attention was on them. They weren't playing the victims in the background anymore. They were the problem. They made a huge scene, got into arguments with guests, and spent the whole night making passive-aggressive comments about how some people abandon their family. And then, apparently that was my other parents, my aunt and uncle, my mother's brother and his wife, breaking point. Over the months I had started hearing things. They weren't just silently enduring my parents' meltdowns anymore. They were arguing back. A cousin mentioned that they had stormed out of a family gathering after one of their public breakdowns. Then came the message from them, short but heavy with meaning. We should have left years ago. It wasn't just regret. It was resignation. That's when the rumors started. People were saying my uncle and aunt were finally done, that they were looking into divorce, that they had been putting up with my parents' antics for years, but now without me as a buffer they saw my parents for what they really were. And my parents? Their entire reputation was in shambles. Even the people who once defended them had backed off. They had gone too far, tried too hard to control me, and in doing so lost control over everything else. And me? I was doing better than ever. I had a great job, amazing friends, and a real father figure in David. I didn't just escape, I thrived. And the best part? They had to watch it all from the sidelines. After the wedding disaster, things got quiet. Too quiet. For a while it seemed like my parents had finally given up. No more dramatic Facebook posts. No random flying monkey relatives showing up in my inbox. Even my sister had gone silent. Then the calls started. Unknown numbers. No voicemails, just ringing over and over. First I ignored them. Then they got more frequent. Middle of the day, late at night, even during work hours. I picked up once, and there was nothing but silence on the other end before the call disconnected. I blocked the numbers, but new ones kept popping up. Then I got the email. It was from my parents. A long, overly sweet message about how they wanted to put the past behind us. How family should always stick together. How they forgave me for the way I treated them. Forgave me? I deleted it. A few hours later my phone buzzed again. This time it was a cousin sending me a screenshot. My parents had posted on Facebook again. Only this time it wasn't the usual vague sob story. This one was specific. They were telling everyone how they had graciously forgiven me for hurting them, how they were so happy that we had finally reconciled, and how parents' love is eternal no matter what. It was all a lie. I hadn't spoken to them. I hadn't agreed to anything. And now they were out there telling everyone that we had made up. I wasn't letting that slide. I made my own post short, to the point. There has been no reconciliation. I have no interest in having a relationship with my parents. Please don't believe everything you read online. That was all it took. Comments flooded in. Some people were confused, some asked if I was sure. But others, they got it. And then my parents saw it. Cue the meltdown. More posts, more victim playing. This time they went all in, talking about how they tried to make peace, but their selfish, cold-hearted son had publicly humiliated them instead. How they had done everything for me, and I had cruelly thrown it back in their face. Some relatives fell for it. Others didn't. At this point, most people were exhausted by the drama. Then they did something I did not see coming. A week later I got a letter in the mail. At first I thought it was another dramatic note from them. But no. This one had an official letterhead. They were suing me for emotional distress. I actually laughed when I saw it. They had no case, no real damages, just pages of nonsense about how I had intentionally caused them suffering by cutting them off and turning people against them. David, being the absolute legend that he is, took one look at the letter and told me not to worry. He knew a lawyer. We set up a meeting. The lawyer didn't even try to be professional about it. He laughed as he skimmed through the papers, called it a joke, said it wouldn't hold up in any court. That should have been the end of it. But my parents, they doubled down. Instead of letting it go, they went nuclear. Another public meltdown, ranting about how they were being forced to take legal action against their own child because they had no other choice. How they had been pushed to the edge by my heartless betrayal. They wanted people to take their side. Instead, they lost the last few supporters they had left. And then came the final bombshell. The extended family was splitting apart. My uncle and aunt, who had been my parents' strongest supporters and financial backers, finally saw through the manipulation. They announced they were cutting all ties and financial support. For years they had enabled my parents, always choosing to believe their side. But something had changed. They stopped defending my parents, started walking away from arguments instead of making excuses for them. Relatives mentioned that the whole extended family seemed tired of the drama, more distant. And when the family separation was finally announced, it wasn't just a sudden decision. It was a long overdue escape from the toxic dynamics my parents had created. Without the extended family's financial support, my parents were screwed. My sister, the golden child, had always been on their side. But now, with the family splitting apart and the money drying up, she was seeing things differently. Maybe it was because the financial security was gone. Maybe it was because our uncle and aunt had finally started telling her things they kept quiet about for years. Either way, she turned on our parents too. Now they were completely alone. The last message I ever got from them came a few days later. You did this. You ruined our lives. I hope you're happy. Blocked. For good this time. They had spent years trying to control me, manipulate me, punish me for existing outside of their grasp. And in the end, they destroyed themselves. It's been a year since I blocked my parents for good. A lot has changed. For the first time in my life, I feel truly profoundly free. No random calls from flying monkey relatives, no social media smear campaigns, no guilt weighing on me every time I make a decision that benefits me instead of them. And the best part? My life is better than ever. Work is great, I got a promotion a few months ago, and my financial situation is the most stable it's ever been. I've been traveling more, meeting new people, and actually enjoying my life without feeling like I have to constantly look over my shoulder. David, of course, has been there through all of it. He's not just my best friend's dad anymore. He's my dad. He introduces me that way to everyone, and I don't correct him. I stopped thinking of it as an honorary title a long time ago. He's the one who supports me, who celebrates my wins, gives me advice, and makes sure I have a place to go on the holidays. Last Christmas was the first time I felt truly at home. David's family welcomed me like I'd always been there. I sat at a full dinner table, surrounded by warmth, laughter, and people who genuinely cared about me. And for the first time, I wasn't just an outsider trying to fit in. I belonged. Meanwhile, my parents' lives are in ruins. After the separation, they were cut off completely. They lost the house, the financial safety net, and the reputation they spent years building. They had to move into a much smaller place. A far cry from the image they always tried to maintain. Their social standing is gone too. The relatives who used to defend them, they've distanced themselves. No one wants to be associated with them after seeing how far they were willing to go to manipulate and control me. And as for my sister, the golden child, she finally saw the truth. At first, she defended them fiercely, dismissing everything I said as an overreaction. But after the financial support dried up, cracks started to form. She saw firsthand how draining they were, how exhausting it was to constantly manage their emotions, how nothing she did was ever enough. Then one day she sent a short message. I see it now. That she saw what I had been dealing with for years. I accepted her apology, but I wasn't in a rush to rebuild anything. She may have been a victim of their manipulation too, but that doesn't erase the things she did or said to me. For now, I'm keeping my distance. And my parents? They've become ghosts. They used to be the respected heads of our extended family, the ones who held everyone together, the ones who were always right no matter what. Now they're an embarrassment. At a recent family gathering, a cousin of mine casually mentioned that someone had leaked old screenshots of my parents' manipulative messages. The fake concern, the guilt trips, the blatant emotional blackmail. It was all out in the open. They have no defenders left. No one to spin their lies. Then 2 weeks ago they made their final move. An email. Their final email was a mix of apology and manipulation. A desperate attempt to regain control. They listed out all the times they had loved me, conveniently skipping over the years of neglect. They insisted they had changed, that they had forgiven me for cutting them off, as if it had ever been their place to forgive. But I knew better. This wasn't about reconciliation. This was about power. And they had lost it. The difference this time? They weren't demanding anything. No guilt trips, no "we're your parents, you owe us." Just desperation. A final pathetic attempt to reel me back in now that they had lost everything. I didn't respond. I didn't even read the whole thing. I just left them on read. That's the part they never understood. It was never about punishing them. It was never about revenge. I just don't care anymore. My life has moved on. I have a real family now, people who love me without conditions. Cutting them off was the best decision I ever made. And the best part? They have to live with it. They have to watch from the sidelines while I build a life so good, so fulfilling, that they can never be a part of it. They lost. And I won. This journey has been a long one. Filled with pain but ultimately immense healing. If you've ever felt like an outsider in your own family, or if you've had to choose your own family, your chosen family over blood, I want to hear your story. What does family truly mean to you? Let me know in the comments below.